Now, the South African Council of Churches has concluded its 2021 National Conference. It's made several calls to churches, society and government. To unpack what was discussed, I'm joined by the SACC General Secretary, Reverend Malusi Mpumlwana. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's start by unpacking some of the biggest themes that were discussed or tackled at this year's conference.
I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, the conference happens obviously at a time when we just emerged from the July unrest, which really was a major, a point of bother for the delegates at the church conference, at the SACC conference, but also the killings of candidates for the upcoming elections became an issue that bothered us. And we're saying that it's becoming a pattern that just about every time there's going to be an election, especially local government elections, people get killed. It is a practice that we believe we cannot allow for this to become the trend and the culture and the expectation in South Africa, that candidates do not reach the polls for the citizens to decide their fate. And of course, we also had the view that the African National Congress should redouble its efforts to strengthen in government the institutions of state, particularly the prosecutor, the justice systems altogether, so that those people who are accused of gross crimes against the people of South Africa should see their day in court and be able to have their cases into conviction and imprisonment. And that as long as we don't see enough of those people, we believe so long will in fact the impunity for crime of corruption continue. Of course, we're also seized with the matters of the public values in our society, and for this reason, for the combination of the issue of public values and the slow transformation of the economy in a way that includes the excluded majority. And so the SACC decided that we would be launching an economic transformation initiative that will be chaired by the outgoing Vice President, Reverend Chigane, and that will look very closely at looking at options that can make.
Oh, Bishop, can you still hear me? You seem, it looks like the Bishop has lost some of his network. There you are. My apologies for that, Bishop. We lost you there for a second, but let's move on with the conversation. You've spoken about the strengthening of state institutions to make sure that law and order is followed, that we're able to transform or grow the economy. But this also highlights the role or the importance of the role that the church can play in ensuring that society develops and grows the way it's supposed to.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, particularly when it comes to what we consider to be missing, that all our politics are very divisive. And we think that it is necessary to create the kind of space where everybody can feel there's a place where I'm just a South African, regardless of where I belong, whether it's racial division, ethnic divisions, political divisions, but there's something that's a sacred space that is just, it's not politicized, that we're all South Africans. And for this reason, we're also launching a commitment to a nation-building initiative. And we're going to be saying more about this as we build this into the next year. But we think that it is necessary to draw public values to a center as be able to say, you know what, I disagree with you on so many things, but there is that place where we can only be one as one united South Africa. That is missing in our society.
Right. Bishop, I'm sure COVID was a big point of conversation at this conference. It really decimated this idea that people can gather and worship in one place. So I'm wondering, amongst yourselves, leaders of the churches, have you spoken about the new way of worshiping in the time of the pandemic? COVID-19 is not going to go away anytime soon. So there must be innovation within the church to ensure that people can still congregate without putting each other at risk.
Three things about the COVID-19 in our conference. The first one is that I think, firstly, you need to know that from the 24th of March last year, the heads of member churches of the SACC were meeting every week. I mean, it's unthinkable that heads of churches can meet every week for 2 hours to talk about what's emerging on COVID, what are the pastoral needs that we need to put into place. So in that context, we also developed in a task team that was led by by Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, who has now been elected president, to look at how we worship differently. We set up norms and standards that our churches are using to make sure that they prevent the spread. But what we're doing now is really to a campaign in what we call Vaccum Zanzi. In this, we are joining the Religious Forum Against COVID-19, which includes all the other faiths and many other churches that are not included in the South African Council of Churches membership. And there's a joint campaign there that we're saying every one of us should make sure that 7 out of 10 people in our pews, in our congregations, in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our communities is vaccinated, because that's going to help us reach to a point where there is kind of a population-wide. We need to have a festive season in December where we can celebrate Christmas much more freely than we do right now. But we are sticking to the norms and standards that we established last year, and I can tell you that they are much stricter than the regulations of government. I remember one church leader said to me, "Oh my goodness, Malusi, these regulations, the government must not see them because they'll make them law."
With that, Bishop, we're running out of time, but I must also address you on something also very important that the conference addressed, and that is the instability that's currently faced beyond our borders in Mozambique and in Eswatini. And I'm just wondering what it is that you believe should be the resolution to what's happening in Cabo Delgado as well as Eswatini.
Cabo Delgado, actually, we're working very closely with the churches and people in Mozambique. Obviously, the churches can only do humanitarian, but we've called on governments to do people must recognize that whatever happens in Mozambique will eventually spill over into South Africa. And so it's not as though it's some kind of distance, something that you don't have to think about. It will come to South Africa. And so we've got a briefing, and we have appreciated the efforts that are currently being made by the Mozambicans, SACC, as well as Rwanda. In Eswatini, you must know that a lot of the churches in South Africa have got pastoral responsibilities in Eswatini, and for this reason, we are convening a meeting of the churches that have got congregations in Eswatini. There is going to be a delegation going to Eswatini in the week of November 1 to 5, which is organized by the Fellowship of Christian Churches in Southern Africa. And we're preparing for that when we are getting our churches to prepare themselves so that they can participate effectively in that part. One of the things we're trying to do is to support the efforts of the Swaziland Council of Christian Council that is calling for dialogue and that all the tensions must come down. There has to be some kind of mutual accommodation, and we're working with all the parties, the civil society, political parties, as well as the government of Eswatini in this direction in conversations through the Swaziland Council of Churches.
Very interesting insights there. That's Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, who's the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, shedding some light into some of the outcomes of the 2021 conference.